If you were to make a list of the essential shop tools that every craftsman should have, clamps would fall somewhere on that list. What type of clamp, however, largely depends on what type of work you're going to be doing. For a woodworker, a long bar clamp like this would come in very handy. However, for a metal worker, a bench vise is probably going to be on that list of essentials. A bench vise is great to act as a second set of hands while you're cutting, drilling, or welding on a workpiece. Most of them have a small anvil on the back that can be used for lightweight jobs. They can even be used as an improvised press in place of an arbor press when you need to put two small press fit parts together or separate them. The one I have here is pretty small, but it gets the job done and it fits the size of my workbench and overall workshop. The one problem with these bench vises, however, is that sometimes the serrated teeth can grip a little bit too hard on a workpiece and end up damaging the finish. So today I want to make a set of small plastic jaws that slip over the metal jaws to protect more delicate workpieces. So the product we're going to use today is called Kydex. Kydex is a brand name for a sheet thermoplastic I should say, that comes in different thicknesses all the way from 0.060 of an inch to 0.125, which is an eighth of an inch. And that's some pretty thick stuff. It's a little bit more difficult to work with. I found that the 0.080 is kind of a good balance between workability and durability. So that's what I'm going to try to use today. Let's try to get a feel for what size we want our blank to be. So first we need to check out our jaws. They're about 2¼ inches wide. Let me take a piece of paper here. I think I want to come just down over the front side a little bit. Doesn't have to be much. They really just need to set in place. They don't particularly even need to snap in place. It would be nice if they do, but they wouldn't have to. So I'm gonna mark a line just right here, and then we'll choose our width. So this total thickness is exactly 1½ inches. Let's get a more precise measurement on our width here. I guess we can cut this down once we get the blank cut. I'm going to make them a little bit wider at 2 3/8. Yeah, 2 3/8 should cover it. So we need a piece 1½ by 2 3/8. This stuff marks pretty easily with just a mechanical pencil. I'm just going to go ahead and cut a piece full length at 1½. Mark another one down here at 1½. This is a scrap piece that I tried making a knife sheath with and it didn't turn out real great. And so I'll just use the leftovers from that for these vise jaws, because I'm sure they're going to get abused and torn up in time and in use, and I'll probably make several sets of these in the course of time. We have a couple different options to cut this Kydex. You can use a utility knife and just score it and then break it along that line. I'm just going to use a pair of tin snips for this piece and just stick to my line as closely as possible. I mentioned that Kydex is the brand name. The other two names that I'm aware of are Bolteron and Holstex. Holstex name comes from this material is commonly used for custom pistol holsters because it provides good retention for the pistol. I have experience with this stuff in different uses. It's used also a lot in custom knife sheaths, as I mentioned. I've played around with it a little bit for that. So 2 3/8 inches wide. Hang on, there's a glare on this. 2 1/4, 2 3/8. Let's just go there. We may need to make a longer one, who knows. And we'll just try to get as close to a 90-degree cut as we can. I'll put a link down in the description where you can buy this stuff on Amazon. You can buy a 1-foot square for, I want to say, around 10 bucks. It's not terribly expensive. If you end up, using it in bulk for, say, different knife sheaths and whatnot, you can There are other sites that you can get it from. Just got this second piece. Hopefully I'm cutting to the right length and I don't need to make them a little bit longer. I measured, but you never really know until you actually try it out. When you're working with this stuff, there are two sides. There's a textured side, kind of see that, and then on the other side it's real smooth. So I'm going to try to put the textured side in so that it would have supposedly a little more grip on the workpiece. So what I'm going to try first, I don't know exactly the best way to do this, so I'm going to just start by putting those two sides, textured side in, and just set it down in my vise and just clamp it in place as square and evenly as possible. Anytime I work with this Kydex, I like to use a pair of thin leather gloves. That way it gives me some dexterity, but I have some protection from the heat. I think this stuff gets soft around, I think it's 250 or 300 degrees, so it's pretty warm. I'm going to go and crank the heat gun up on high, and you don't want to let this stuff smoke if you can avoid it. I have here a couple pieces of foam that's made just for working with Kydex, and that's going to allow me to really press the Kydex into the top profile of the bench vise and get the best form as possible. All right. Here we are looking at the end. You can see that basically I just didn't get it heated up down low enough. So let's heat this up and start over again. One of the nice things about working with Kydex is that it's pretty forgiving. If you don't get it right on the first shot, you can just heat it up and reform it. And if you don't burn it, you can usually do that 3, 4, sometimes even 5 times. Alright, so let's try a new technique here. I want to take a piece of this foam. Remember, textured side in, at least that's my theory that I'm going with at this point. My theory here is that we can put them in, I have to open it up a little bit more, clamp them in place, and maybe not even have to do anything with the foam, just hold everything in place and just crank that vise down. Let's try that. Let's start by heating up this other jaw of the vise. Throw a little bit of heat on my foam, and lastly the Kydex. Starting to curl at the edge. Oh yeah, curl at the edges. That means it's a little too soft. It's starting to burn it a little bit. It's a fine line. Alright, so dropping everything here. Alright, I think I'm cooling off a little bit too much here, but I'm going to try to clamp everything down. I hear the foam tearing a little bit. Alright, let's crank this back open, see what we have. Ooh, really tore up my foam a little bit. They would stay in there. They would stay in there okay. You can bump them out, but they're not going to fall out per se. You know what I should have done in hindsight is cut them a little bit long so that the ends wrap around. Let me try clamping. Here's a brass rod. Let me just clamp that in place and see how it holds. Yeah, pretty good. I could bend that rod before it shifts in the vise. I think if I were to make these again, I would cut the blanks a little bit longer. That way they wrap around the end of the jaws of the vise here, and hopefully they would clip on a little bit better. But for as infrequently as I use these, they'll do just fine as they are. If you enjoy little shop tips, tricks, and projects like these, check out the playlist at the end of the video where there's all sorts of little fun things to do in the shop. If you enjoy learning how stuff works, maybe how to fix it when it doesn't, tap subscribe, hit that bell. We'll see you guys back for the next video.